Stoa is a digital campfire where we cohere in dialogue about what matters most at the knife's edge of what's happening now.
Good evening, everybody, every mind and every soul. Glad to be here with you. I propose that we take a moment to sink into the space. Let yourself relax. Reattune to the present moment. Feel the flow of its potential. Welcome to this Glass Bead lecture on the Regenaissance, the era of regeneration. This is how we're going to proceed. There will be a 30-minute lecture where I will open the conceptual space of the Regenaissance, followed by a 30-minute Glass Bead Oracle. What is a Glass Bead Oracle? A Glass Bead Oracle is a way of taking questions and answers where I'm going to try and answer the chosen questions in specific time frames. For example, in 1 minute moves, or in 2 minute moves, or in 4 minute moves. So when we get to the Glass Bead Oracle, I'll explain more how that works. And I'll be trying to enter deeper into this trance state of responding to the flow of information which I'm receiving from you to co-create this exploration together. And finally, we're going to play a glass bead game together, where everyone will have the opportunity to play with the concepts that have been generated here today. Before the beginning, a reminder that this is a language game. This is word play and world play. Like all theories, like all visions, pieces have been picked and many excluded. But hopefully, it will delight, enlight, or even illuminate a few of you if the pieces play well together. The Regenaissance, the era of regeneration. The Regenaissance is the potential cultural era from 2020 to 2030, where the seeds of planetary regeneration were sown and the harvest begun. The Regenaissance is born, like the Renaissance, from an information explosion. In that past time, in a few centuries, the development of macro and micro optics transfigurated the cosmos. The rediscovery of ancient Greco-Latin code pried open the Christian hegemony, and the invention of the printing press sparked an explosion of cultural creation. But the Regenaissance will take place in a mere decade. We stand before the transportal of AI, gene editing, and the Anthropocene. How we yield this triforce over the next decade will determine all life to come. Luckily for us, the counterculture has borne its fruit in time. Psychedelic-channeled cellular wisdom has birthed the internet, the technorealization of the invisible interconnectedness of the cosmos. The ancient somatics of yoga have repositioned the body in its one superpower of attention at the center of each universe. Indigenous thinking continues to dissolve the memetic infrastructure of colonial civilization. Libgen and Sci-Hub have opened the floodgates of the world's libraries and scientific journals. And each new link of the blockchain shines with the potential of freeing us from the monoculture of money. And yet, this transformatory potential has no central attractor, no axis mundi around which to spin. This missing axis is the ecology of ancient festivals of the axial age. These socio-homeostatic rites were suppressed at the fall of the Roman Empire and failed to break through the territorialized topsoil of the Catholic Church during the Renaissance. During these festivals, the various dimensions and polarities of social life were given dynamic form through communal ritual and play. Wealth and abundance were redistributed in great feasts, and competitive games allowed for the non-monetary celebration of hierarchies. A renewed ecology of festivities is the key to rejuvenating the tree of collective living, allowing once more the energy of the sun to flow from the highest leaves to the deepest roots, and return flexibility to the brittle boughs and branches of our rigid hierarchies. Around this tree, a new garden of abundance shall grow, giving birth to its greatest fruit, clay. What is the Regenaissance? The Regenaissance is a potential cultural era from 2020 to 2030. It's a cultural era that if we play the right games, if we make the right moves, we will manifest, we will bring into being. It is the era during which the processes of planetary regeneration were begun. And even by the end of it, by 2030, it does not mean that everything will be okay, that everything will be saved. No, times are going to be hard either way. But the question is whether we want regeneissance or degenerescence, whether we want a regeneration or a degeneration. If we continue to play the games that we are playing, our planet will degenerate. The ecologies will collapse. Societies will suffer. people are going to be even more uprooted than they are. They're going to retreat into tighter and tighter ego skins. And yet, there is so much potential in this time. We've experienced an era of relative peace like no other since World War II. At least in Europe and Northern America, we have been saved from the chaos of war. If we harness this potential, if we learn to play with this potential, then part of the future can be saved. There are many parallels between the Renaissance and the Regeneissance. They're both born from an information explosion. Back then, there was the printing press. Now there's the internet. Back then, there was ancient history rediscovered in the Latin and Greek texts. Now we have the deep history of our understanding of the cosmos. Back then, there was the Black Death, and now there's COVID-19. Now, we're knowing more and more about less and less. But there's a similar method to be applied here. There's so much to be learned from the past. There's so much which has been forgotten. This is what Plato called anamnesis. It's the idea that we already know the truth. The truth is already within us, but we have forgotten the truth. We've forgotten how societies in the past attuned to their ecology and prevented their local collapse. For example, anamnesis can be performed through cultural archaeology. Back in the Renaissance, it was translating and preserving the classics. Now there is a whole world to be explored on the internet through websites like Libgen, like Sci-Hub. All of this information is available to us. We just have to learn how to navigate it and how to extract from it the keys, the beads. Another method of anamnesis is entheogenesis, tapping into the deep code of cellular wisdom through the use of psychedelics. And then there's presence. There's remembering that we are here now, which so often we forget through meditation, through mindfulness. What do we need to regenerate? We need to regenerate everything. We need to regenerate ourselves. We need to regenerate our societies. We need to regenerate our ecologies. We need to regenerate our relationships. We've gone pretty far down the wrong path. Right now, I'd like to concentrate on one thing, on the regeneration of the social body, of the social soma. How do we regenerate the social soma? Well, in a similar way that we regenerate our individual soma. We stop. We stop. We reattune. We resync with the rhythm. For example, social metabolism. There's the need for a metabolism of hierarchy. periods where hierarchy is dissolved, where the pyramid is dissolved into the magic circle. There's the need of an economic metabolism, moments where the economy stops, where we're given a moment to breathe. There's no work, there's no business, there's rest, there's holiday, not 30 days a year. But like we'll see in ancient times, in ancient Rome, half of the year was a holiday. Now there are reasons for that, and we will attend to them. But we don't need to work non-stop, and even we need to stop working because we're working ourselves to death. We're working ourselves into the ground, and we're starting to bore so deep into the earth that the core will not hold. There's also the need for a metabolism of roles, to not be stuck in one shape, in one form, in one job. There needs to be moments where the hierarchy is inversed. There needs to be moments where we can play with the different polarities. There needs to be moments where we play with altered states of consciousness. And then there's social synchrony. The community needs to synchronize. They need to come together and do the same thing at the same time, without which that sense of bonding is not generated. But then there's the need for global synchrony, where the whole planet comes together and synchronizes, which is one of the great challenges of our time. And there's the need for cosmic synchrony, the ritualization of our synchronization with the celestial cycles, paying attention to how the ecosystem breathes, paying attention to how the cosmos breathes, and attuning our breath, both individual and social, to that. How was this done in the past? It was done with the ancient festivals, with an ancient cycle of festivals and games, which were ritually synced with a cosmology that understood the cycles of nature and gave them form and symbols in gods, in rites. For example, the ancient Ludi of Rome, festivals of play, like the Olympic Games, competitions to see who can rise in the hierarchy, in this moment where less attention is paid to the fixed hierarchies and more is paid to the potential of a new hierarchy. Ancient theatre, where the poets sung the collective into catharsis. Who paid for these festivals? The rich. There was the tradition of liturgy in ancient Greek, or monera in ancient Rome, where it was expected that the rich would give back to the community by paying for the communal rites, paying for the celebrations where there was a redistribution of the wealth, where there was the possibility to relax and to play. And in these ancient festivals, there was also the subversal of roles, like in the Saturnalia, the inspiration of carnivals. Nowadays, we have Burning Man. Burning Man is the generation of a temporary gift economy. And now that more and more have the abundance to gift, more and more can participate in this gift economy. Burning Man is Dionysian. It's erotic. There's the abundant use of psychedelics, the exploration of many different states, altered states of consciousness, necessary for the spiritual metabolism of the human. Rather than being monophasic, there's a need for a polyphagia of cycling between different states, of dreams, of seriousness, of play, of dance. How to integrate the best of the past with the best of the present. How to generate a new ecology of festivals by taking the best of the ancient games, by taking the best of Burning Man and giving birth to the turn. The turn is the metamodern burn. It's the burn integrated into society, which includes all, which shares abundance with all. It's a temporary gift economy, an intergenerational playground from child's play to sage play, and a regenerative competition in the middle of the city. It ties into one of the fundamental motions of the cosmos, the cycle of the days, the seasons, the years of the Milky Way itself, which makes it cosmolocal. It's a universal metaphor which can be adapted to a local ecology. It's organized by guilds around fundamental regenerative social processes. They're called the seek, the code, the build, and the tend. They are sub-games, sub-festivals that anybody can take like a burn and organize according to its principles. The goal of the turn is to build the momentum of the gift economy, starting with a day, a year, then a week, then a month, then 3 months, until we can replace the current non-stop grinding of the wheel we are trapped on with a more balanced turn that will regenerate the commons. Here we have the turn. We have the seek, the code, the build, the tend, going in a cycle. Terms which I'll explain in a moment. Each game has its own playground. The seek, its labyrinth. The code, the museum. The build, the temple. The tend, the garden. And here we see examples of different guilds who help organize in their local environment the different games. The seek. The seek is the game of questions. It is the game of exploration. It's the question, what is the way out of the labyrinth we've got ourselves stuck in? It's the question, how do we regenerate where we live? What are the different methodologies? What's the different research that we require? It includes games ranging from child's play, hide and seek, to geocached treasure hunts, to competitions about who can come up with the best regenerative research. Then there's the code, which is the writing of answers. It's the planning. It's the constituting. But it's also the space of culture, of creating symbols, of poetry, of art, of music, and of course, technology. For example, civic technology. How do we use technology to regenerate where we live? Also, planning how to regenerate where we live, putting things in order, creating an action plan. And then comes the build, where the action takes place. For example, build a playground for children to play in. Build a temple for people to worship in. Build a bench for people to sit on. Integrating all the information from the seek, where the environment has been explored, has been mapped, and we know a bench is lacking here. We know a playground is lacking here. The plan of action has been generated in the code. We know what must be done. And so the instructions are implemented in the build. And then comes the tend. The tend is the moment of aftercare. It's the moment where we take care of the social interaction that made all of this possible. It's the moment where we clean up, where we play games like trash tag. Who can clean up the most trash where they live? It's the moment where we summarize and we review what has been done. Some seeds have been planted now. There's a lot of detail about how this all works in the document, which will be now posted to the chat. In this, you'll be able to follow along at your own leisure once I've opened up the permissions for it, and explore in detail how this all works. It's all clarified in this document. It remains a draft at this point in time. There are many things which need to be added. There are notes which are included, but it gives a clearer understanding. It gives some flesh to the bones which have just been shared here. Okay. We're now going to move to the Glass Bead Oracle. if you have questions, please type them into the chat. I'm going to ask some of you to curate these questions for me. To participate in the process. To help me enter into this state of flow.
There's a question here. So much is about collective consciousness, and people are generally distracted and shallow thinking. How do we overcome that wall of who cares? We can't do anything.
Just give me 1 moment. I'm just opening up these permissions. Okay. There we go, in that new link, this should be possible to open. Okay, I'm going to need some more questions. Please, a few more questions into the chat. There we go. Okay. So this is how I'm going to proceed. I'm going to ask 4 people to volunteer to curate these questions. If we could get some raised hands. There we go, Alexandra. And Jen. Who else? I need 2 more people. There we go. Number 3. Thank you. And 1 more. Ursula. Thank you. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is to curate questions from this list. I'm not going to choose the questions. You're going to choose the questions. I'm going to start with Alexandra. And Alexander, I'm going to ask you to choose 4 questions from this list and post these questions into the chat. If you could please give them numerals so they're clear to me, so they stand out, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to answer these questions 1 minute apiece. And then, Jen, I'm going to ask you to choose 2 questions. You don't have to choose from the ones which are currently there. People can continue to write questions into the chat as the session goes on. And at the appropriate point, I'll ask you for 2 questions, again with numerals. And I'll answer them with 2 minutes to give it a different shape. Then, Evan, I'm going to ask you for 4 questions again, 1 minute each. And finally, Ursula, I'm going to ask you for 1 question, which I'm going to answer in 4 minutes. And yes, selecting questions from the chat. Okay, here we go. The first 4 questions. So as always with a Glass Bead game, we're going to begin with 1 minute of meditation, which I invite you all to join in. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Who makes up guilds? How do they form? We make up guilds. We start in small groups, start in groups of 3 or 6. A group of 6 is called a prism. It's a small unit of collective intelligence where you can start to generate enough novelty from the different interactions between the different dynamics of the different personalities. In the text, there are different guilds which are described. You can look and be inspired from those different guilds and see how they take shape, what kind of games they have, what kind of developmental lines they have, what kind of roles they have, and either adopt them or generate your own. What are the signs that this is happening already? First of all, Burning Man. The materialization of the temporary gift culture from which we can be inspired and that we can take forward. From the sensation that things are decaying right now, that the soil is becoming fertile and there's the potential for new birth, or there's the potential for more decay, the soil becoming blocked, becoming incapable of seeds taking root, and more erosion, more loss. Please describe the symbology of the image of the playbook document. Here we have the cycle. Around it, we have the seek, the code, the build, and the tend. In the center, we have the circus tent, which is the feast. It's described in the document. It is the space where people come together, share food. They compete for who can cook the best meal. They can explore altered states of consciousness in dance. And in the middle, there are the elements. In the burn, there's the burn. But here all the elements are contained. You have the burn, you have the flood, you have the quake, you have the storm. You have a celebration of all the different elements, ritualized, brought back in front of us and experienced. How could we start right now? Start planning. Start planning for spring 2021, which is the likely time, we hope, that the lockdowns will start to be loosened and all of this potential which has been building up will be ready to be let loose. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We need to be ready to ride this wave. If we miss it, we may never get the chance again. Jen, your 2 questions, please. How do we all speak together in the same language without sacrificing our unique voices? We need neo-logos. We need to reclaim our language. And we need to make it explicit to others. We have inherited languages with corrupt grammars, with corrupt vocabularies, with grammars that articulate our realities in specific ways, with vocabularies that leave massive blind spots and focus too much on the wrong things, and on definitions of words that do not belong to us. We need to redefine our own language. We need to create personal dictionaries that we can share with other people so that when we communicate, they can refer to our vocabulary and understand, really understand what we mean. We need to learn more languages, not only those that exist now, but also the ancient languages, the origins of how we communicate. To resynchronize, to return to the common roots. And from these common roots, we can start to regenerate a common language. It seems the Regeneissance will have to solve the crisis in meaning making we are having as a society as part of its time. What steps can we take to initiate this process? Practice. Build a serious ecology of practice and stick to it. Practice with others and play with others. First step, reattune to the present. Resolve the trauma of the soma so you can reperceive reality. Connect to it. Give your attention to it, and it will reward you. Interact with the present, not with the simulation of the future perpetually being generated inside of us. Prepare. Prepare for the wave. Organize yourself how you can now over the internet, locally. Interconnect the local actors which are already there. The different groups of the commons, the different charities, the different festivals. Lay the groundwork now so that when the wave comes, you're ready. Even, could you please choose 4 questions? Type them into the chat. Oh, hell yes. I'm just going to take another minute of meditation. How does a celebratory, engaging artistic culture embed the daily city life? Redesign, redecorate the city. Repaint the city. Organize the street artists. Re-ornament the city. Design fractal ornaments that mesmerize. Generate novelty. Build playgrounds. Spaces where culture can be played with. Playgrounds for children, playgrounds for adults, playgrounds for sages. How does finance shift such that we don't use money but some other bookkeeping tool to visualize levels of effort and expenditure of resources? Balance out the economy with the gift economy. There's the need to keep count, and we're going to be able to keep count in many novel ways with cryptocurrencies. Interestingly enough, some postulate that the birth of the individual and philosophy is related to the birth of currency in ancient Greece. Now, what's going to happen with the birth of many different new currencies now? But more importantly, the gift economy. There needs to be times where things are shared, things are given. There is no calculation. There is no numeric calculation. There's a future, a close future and a distant future of reciprocity. What cultivates your personal divine conflagration? The present. The present, when it can be tuned into, nourishes completely. When the past and the future join in that expansive moment, that is the apple of the garden. If you can balance yourself on your tiptoes long enough to grab a bite, it will nourish you. What structures do we need to host the development of the ideas and actions? First and foremost, we need self-development. We need to grow in new ways that we've never grown before. We need to be able to contain more complexity and more depth than ever before. We need to be stronger than ever before. We need to heal our vessels. We need to heal our traumas so that we can contain this great wave of potential, this great wave of spirit that is coming our way. Fundamentally, we need to learn how to breathe. We need to learn how to breathe. Ursula. How can we, with Regeneissance, attempt to transform existing culture and systems from within, or create an alternate way of being that seduces status quo to convert? Both and. The turn takes place in the city, in the midst of civilization. It is organized by para-institutions, the guilds. It is organized by groups of people coming together and facilitating the participation of the population. It generates new games that anybody can get involved in, that children can play, building with Lego, that adults can play, building the infrastructure for urban regeneration, the benches, the parks, the playgrounds, the communal spaces, that sages can participate in, the building of temples, the building of monuments. The turn is metamodern. That means that it integrates everybody. It integrates all cultures. It aims to integrate all ages, to get them to interact with each other, to play intergenerational games, to play intercommunal games, to play games one part of the city with another part of the city, to play games where one city comes to another city and they play together, building the bonds between cities. These bonds already exist in twin cities all over the world. Various cities already have these relationships that can be tapped into and used in novel ways. The transformation of the existing culture. The regeneration of the existing culture. Being beacons, embodying role models, being the leaders that the moment needs. By showing what it is possible to be, by continuing to explore human potential, by pushing the limits of the human potential movement, which is not yet finished. There are unreached depths. There are unreached simplexities that we can embody. And through our greatest gift, our presence, we can inspire, we can give the breath that we have cultivated. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. That is the end of the Glass Bead Oracle and of the Glass Bead lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. There's now going to be the opportunity for everybody to play the Glass Bead Game. What is the Glass Bead Game, for those who don't know? It's a game of taking turns to co-create meaning. Its basic form lasts 10 minutes, 2 players, 5 turns each of 1 minute, where they explore a topic, a bead. It begins with a meditation and ends with a contemplation. There are no rules except to take turn, but there are 3 ideals. 1, we avoid the use of I and you to bypass the ego and enter into the distributed consciousness. 2, we intertwine our move with the previous move, trying to connect to as many different points as possible, which will demand that we pay attention, that we give attention, that we nourish the other with our attention, and that we listen all the way through, that we do not hold on to the first thought that comes to mind, but rather we allow the full flow of the other's voice to enter into us and allow that flow intertwined with our own to emerge. And finally, we concentrate as much of our meaning, of much of our truth, as much of our perspective into what we say. We give attention to the words we use. We give attention to the silences we take. We're now going to break out into rooms of 2 to play a game on regeneration. To play the game, you're going to need a timer. In a moment, I'll put the timer as a link into the chat. You can also go to glassbeadgames.com and click on timer. And you'll see a place to type in the name, which here is Regeneration. The timer is synchronized for everybody. So if you believe in that kind of thing, there may be some synchronicities emerging from our communal play. We're now going to break out into rooms of 2. There will be a short moment to prepare, after which I shall start the timer. You'll hear a gong, which marks the end of the turn. There's also a visual display of the timer, so you know when the end of the turn is coming. Only use the visual cue if you do not hear the sound for some reason. Pay attention to what the other person is saying. We're now going to break out into rooms of 2.